All right, guys. Today I'm joined by Mike Alfaro, co-founder and director at Goodhumans, a Mexico City-based data-centric marketing firm that are helping brands scale across Mexico and Latin America. Mike has a unique background in transitioning from tech supply chain at IBM and Ericsson into marketing. He has a notable recent campaign that includes a QuickBooks launch in Mexico that I'm sure we can dive into more. And he has some new interesting and exciting projects that he's working on, and he's excited to share. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. It's an honor to be here at your show and just to share, as you were mentioning, some experiences and things that we have learned, among all these years in the marketing industry. And yes, as you mentioned, my story, it's quite peculiar because it did not start in marketing. Actually, my early professional years were in something completely different, as you were mentioning. I was working for high-tech companies in Mexico. There's a lot of electronic in Guadalajara specifically, and I was doing supply chain. In charge of planning and purchasing, spending money, the logistics, a different arena as marketing. Life has a lot of changes, a lot of turns, and it was like 10, 11 years ago, I had the chance to leave the electronic industry and I joined the agency world. One of my brothers previously had started, co founded the agency, Goodhumans. And there was also a lot of changes going on in the agency. And it was the perfect timing, me to change to a different world. And we together shifted the agency to where it's now. So that's in a quick sentence, my peculiar case, because speaking with other agency owners, the normal thing is for everyone to be long white marketeers, right? So in my particular case, it was different. I mean, my founding, my professional career, my training is on engineering. And then along the way, I learned, and I mentioned this because I think that in my particular case helped a lot because marketing nowadays has become very technical. A lot of tools, a lot of data. So there's a lot going around marketing. And I think that in my specific case, having this different formation, it's a competitive advantage that now I see it that way. I mean, at the beginning, I was struggling a little bit because marketing has a lot of their own language, their own rhythm. It's a different world. But data today in marketing, it's crucial. Maybe we're going to talk into this a little bit ahead, but AI analyzing audiences, understanding customers, the back of that, the backbone is information, it's data. So that in my case, it came very handy to have that formation, that previous formation.
And when we were chatting earlier, Mike, you mentioned that your experience in data and tech and everything is something that you were able to apply, not just inside of your agency, but inside of the clients that you guys work with to help them build that type of high level infrastructure, data, reporting tech. So what would you say is like the biggest opportunity that you carried with you from your past into current clients?
For me, it was a disadvantage at first, but then it became very clear. Coming from the electronic world, for the 500 Fortune enterprise world, there is a lot of processes, sometimes bureaucratic, I have to say, but it's very structured. So that became super handy on the marketing side because even though we are managing creative processes, even though we're facing with, making a campaign, having a creative team produce something, at the end of the road, the agencies, we're delivering, right? So we have to deliver even either a TV video or a website or a campaign, etc. But all the process behind that to have everyone work precisely at the time they are required to execute, to deliver on time according to the customer's requirements became very handy, to have that previous formation. So then because creative agencies sometimes are a little bit relaxed or casual in the way they operate, but it's a business, right? So we have to make sure that we deliver accordingly as the customer is expecting on time, and measure things that they sound obvious, but maybe they're not that simple to measure customer satisfaction, the quality of the deliverables that one is doing. So that specifically, that rigid formation on the past became very handy. And then lastly, I would say that specifically in my case, marketing has a lot to do in digital marketing with e-commerce. Now, e-commerce, I would say like 50% of the success of an e-commerce is precisely logistics, is managing inventories, is managing purchases, planning, etc. Obviously, the site, the campaigns, etc. But that previous experience on logistics comes very handy because it's incredible that even large retail companies that have their e-commerce or enterprises, they give the keys, the operation to marketing, but they're not experts on basics, on basic supply chain, KPIs, dealing with inventory management, tracing, pediments, all of that. So it's a weird combination, my case, but that those two came super helpful down the way.
That makes sense, especially with the logistics and e-commerce. You can have great marketing to sell insane amount of products. If you can't deliver, if you can't ship, if you can't have the inventory, it's not very pretty on the marketing side to see refunds, cancellations, all of that.
That's correct.
So there's always this awkward stage inside of agencies where revenue's growing, but fulfillment and sales are at capacity. So how have you and your partners managed that inside of Goodhumans?
As you mentioned, that's a tough one because on one side, we all want to be selling more, having new customers, expand our territories. So that's also always in our minds as owners of an agency. What I can tell you is that we have to be very careful understanding our installed capacity on the type of products that we sell. And for instance, we have products like doing a commercial, a video, a campaign that is tied to a group of designers, video editor, the creative team. So you have X amount of hours available, of man hours. So that part is the hardest to scale, because to scale that, you either have to be more efficient, have them deliver faster so you can have available time slots for new products, or scale by hiring more people, right? But hiring more people, it also moves the balance on the money side, right? So
Hmm.
so that's complicated. Now, on the other hand, at least we have some products that are not tied to a specific resource, but platforms, or all other type of tools, more likely. For instance, in our specific case, we do also offer tools for social listening. That's a niche tool for marketing. So it doesn't matter if we have 10 customers or 100 or 1,000, because the platform is self-service. It all drills down to administrative processing. And I mean, delivering invoices and collecting payments. So that's easier to grow, to scale, than the creative process of the agency. I don't know if I answered the question, but it's kind of being very careful on the products that you have, and some products, and knowing which ones you can just get and chase more and more customers.
You said something interesting for those who don't know, myself included. What is social listening and why is that valuable for businesses?
Hey, social listening. Imagine that you are the owner of an important coffee brand like Star Chris, that you have worldwide presence in hundreds of cities, etc. In marketing, it's very important to know what people are saying, what people are doing, reacting in social media, in digital, in blogs or places like Reddit, Facebook, Instagram, etc. Because that's the brand recognition and the brand quality that you have, right? So it's super important for you to know what's going on, right? But if you have hundreds of stores in different cities in different countries, there is a point in which you cannot, it's physically impossible for you to be monitoring everything, because you can say, okay, I have my fan page and I can open my Facebook, my Instagram, and I can be monitoring what's going on. But when you grow this 1,000 times and you also want to keep an eye not only on you, but on your competitors or on a specific topic, then you need these special tools like social listening. And social listening is precisely that, is being capable of your brand, your competitors, a topic, real time, anywhere you would choose. That's my short sentence for that.
Got it. That makes sense. Thanks for sharing and elaborating there. In terms of the clients that you work with currently and the clients that you potentially want to work with in the future, we spoke a little bit about North American companies wanting to tap into Latin America. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Is that something that you can help them do? Is that something you've successfully done in the past, or do you like to focus on Latin American countries?
That's an interesting topic. I would say for we're based on Mexico City. So obviously it's easier, to have a stronger presence with the customer locally, because I can just drive down, visit them, have a dinner. That makes a stronger relationship, right? Now, the reality is that marketing, the type of marketing that we do, digital marketing and having the platforms, we have no frontiers, right? So we have done that in the past, as you were asking. We have had customers in North America, Canada, Argentina, Colombia, Australia. I mean, there is no limit for that. The only occasions that we have dropped some customers is because of language barriers. I mean, some Asian companies and Portuguese, because honestly, didn't want, we couldn't handle that part, but we don't speak Portuguese or Chinese. So those are the only occasions where we saw a stopper in there, right? Now, where do we want to go? Well, precisely is to grow the type of customers that we would like. And I mention it like that because not only local or in the US or wherever, but having the privilege to choose a specific company. For instance, you might know there is a Latin American company that it's competing very strongly to Amazon, right? So that's Argentinian based. So personally, I think that's a very interesting case, business case. We have not closed anything yet, but that's what I'm trying to say, that more than working with a specific geography, is choosing the customers that we would like. Now, Mexico and United States, we are extremely tied together. From a management point of view, I would also keep always an eye on Mexico and Canada, because there is a lot of companies that come from the US or Canada to Mexico, and as well from Mexico or to Canada and the US. For instance, take the case of, well, that's Canadian, but for instance, Tim Hortons, that for years and years didn't have a presence in Mexico, and it's a couple years since they entered here. And they have an interesting marketing approach. Their campaigns are very fresh, at least in Mexico. What I'm trying to say is that the United States and Canada will always be in our commercial targets, at least in the midterm that we can visualize.
Got it. Okay. And
And
thanks for
something
sharing.
and sorry, and
Go ahead.
something else, specifically Mexico, Guadalajara, and Monterrey, which are the largest cities in Mexico, are super influenced by by American culture. You go here in Mexico specifically to a lot of places, for instance, a restaurant, a store, and you can find, I mean, it's not everywhere, but you can find a menu in English, or, the culture is blending. That's what I'm trying
Okay.
to say. So it's easier for us marketers to chase a culture like that. Because sometimes, for instance, working with even Latin American geographies like Colombia or Peru or things like that, they're more different than Mexico. than the US. So that's a funny thing to observe.
I guess you can sense that, especially being in that environment and working closely with them, you can sense it probably pretty quickly, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Interesting. Mike, I'm curious, given that you have a tech background and given that you mentioned AI, how are you leveraging AI inside of your agency to stay competitive?
You said it very clearly. It's, I would say, more than stay competitive is a matter of or die in the midterm, because AI has become, at least in the marketing area, crucial to speed things, right? For instance, to give you an example, it's a great resource, to bounce ideas, using things like ChatGPT or Grok or whatever AI engine that you choose. We ourselves use that to bounce ideas, for a campaign and complement, for instance, keywords, or complement hashtag investigations, or when we have a pitch that's, competing or bidding for an opportunity. That's an excellent source to quickly understand a customer that or a lead that you have never worked in the past, or a brand that you're not familiar with. So it's very important to adopt that on the speed your day-to-day work arena. Now, generative AI in marketing, that's another thing, another very important thing, because it's making our processes not only more efficient, but I think that we're on the brisk on turning them more cost effective. For instance, now having an AI voiceover, it's way cheaper than hiring someone to borrow their voice. And 2 or 3 years ago, you could clearly notice when you were using artificial voice. But now we have cases in which we ourselves cannot tell the difference on an artificial generated voice, right? Or having AI adapt a basic campaign, a basic image to different scenarios or backgrounds. You can do that with a push of a button, foreseeing the campaign guidelines, but it's faster. And sometimes not, I'm touching that the topics of cheaper, complementing your work, but also you sometimes get these wild ideas that you've never thought of. And that's refreshing on generative AI. That's something that we use, we embrace it. And I think that it's specifically for marketing, it's the perfect tool. Now, you have to be very careful also, because, for instance, on conversations, on investigations like ChatGPT, you need to know a little bit on the topic that you're bouncing on and off with the AI, because my my one phrase is that ChatGPT will always tell you what you want to hear, right? So if it's true, if it's false, he doesn't care. But so you have to know the topic enough so you can guide this artificial intelligence, because at the end, that's it. It's a tool. So if you do not know the topic and you just believe with your eyes blind shot what a chat, an AI chat is telling you, have a problem. So you have to be careful with those.
Yeah, I hear you there. ChatGPT can definitely hallucinate. I've experienced that. So,
Yeah,
Mike, before we jumped on, you mentioned that you are working on a new project called Carbono.
that's
Wh-
correct.
What can you share about that?
As you have heard, well, I started in a chain. They then joined a marketing agency. Along the way, we had a startup for rents. So we're always doing new projects. And now I'm joining Carbono. That's an agency. It was more creative agency oriented in Mexico City. So I became partner, and we're shifting to combining, the digital experience, the data experience, with this creative agency that it's a very solid trajectory on creative. So we can have what in marketing is known omni-channel. We can truly build end-to-end communication. So what I'm trying to say is that it would not matter if a person is consuming an ad in TikTok, in a magazine, in the TV, media, etc. It's always the same message, the same type of communication. So it makes sense to the person to go and consume a product. because that's another reality that in digital marketing, we focus all of our efforts in doing a great job on digital, on social media or in our website. But humans, they go out to the street, they still go to the store, they enjoy going to a ball game. People will continue to live in the real world. What we're trying to do in Carbono is embrace the omni-channel experience. I mean, to this point, I'm very grateful to Goodhumans, grateful with IBM and the other tech companies that I have worked in the past, everything that I've learned. So I consider that I have become strong on the digital arena, not only digital marketing, but being savvy on tech and data and technology, but also bringing that to the real world outside. That's a challenge, and that's the new that I'm working on with Carbon.
Got it. And so just to clarify, Mike, is it more of a software productized play, or is it agency services leveraging software? What is the business model?
It's more the second agency and supported on software, because specifically the marketing, the digital marketing piece of that, it's becoming super tech complex. And not only because of the process flow or the customer experience, but the background, it's super complex. And not only because of the tools, but there's a lot of ways to do one thing. Tools, designing the system architecture, it's complicated. It falls more in the software industry. That's something that I've learned from several projects that we have worked with. They come asking for a marketing consultancy, their digital campaigns, etc. But at the end, it's redesigning their tech stack, that their technological architecture. So it's we're one foot in one foot in technology and software, and the other one is on marketing. So it's a weird world.
That makes sense. I'm excited to learn more about Carbono as you are releasing and launching and growing that agency. Getting ready to wrap up here, Mike. For other agency owners that want to hit that 6, 7, 8 figure mark, what is one piece of advice that you think would be important for them to know?
So if you want to scale, as you mentioned, also have customers, larger customers, not only quantity, but the quality of your projects is precisely that. Choose your projects. It's easier to try to grab everything that crosses on the way, but you have to be mature enough and identify what kind of projects will become more time consuming. So just drop those. Do not grab everything. That's number one. The second advice that I would give is that you have to be very skillful in general administration, and that is administrating your personnel, having human resources, techniques to leverage and keep people happy and working. So that's key. So you can have flawless operation that delivers some time. And lastly, in specifically for us in the marketing world, you cannot end a day without learning something new. That's because in marketing, things change every day. Every day there is a new platform, a new technology, a new process. You have to be on top of what's going on. So those three, I would say, they're super basic.
Super basic, but probably fundamental for
Fundamental.
for anybody in business, especially in this space. Mike, where can people find out more about you, about Good Humans, about Carbono, or anything that you're working on?
Yeah, it's okay if I give my URL, or you can find more. You can follow me in, for instance, in LinkedIn. I'm like Miguel Alfaro in LinkedIn. You can follow our page. It's carbono.mx. And I think that's a good place to find me. Or you can just shoot me an email. I'm miguel.alfaro@carbono.mx.
Thanks so much for coming on the show today, Mike.
Thanks. It's a pleasure.